All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order so we can get started. So, ma'am, will you begin with a roll call, please?
Ms. Yoshimura? Here. Ms. Dean? Here. Mr. Mulcahy?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ferguson?
Here.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Spring?
Here.
Mr. Strike?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, and the first order of business is the minutes from Monday, November 4th, 2013.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Hit both buttons, Jim, this microphone and the thing. I just have a motion, Mr. Ferguson, and a second by Commissioner Dean. Anyone, any comments on the minutes? Any objection to approval of the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, the minutes from November 4th, 2013 are approved. Thank you. Next on the agenda, special order business disclosures. Commissioner Yoshimura, will you handle those?
Yes, please. Commissioner Robinson?
Yes, in the resolution 2013-047 related to case 2013-148, I will not be voting on that resolution. I did not participate in that case. I was absent. And in the matter of case 2013-153, conditional use for natural resource extraction, I would like to disclose that my company, Cook Inlet Housing Authority, has a contract with Davis Constructors, and Massex is the operator, who's a subsidiary of Davis. Simply ask that, given that information, the commission decide whether or not it's appropriate for me to participate.
I make a motion that he be directed to participate.
All right. Yes, we have a motion. Right. All right. Thank you. You are directed to participate. Commissioner Strike?
Yes, as I was not seated at the time, I would be abstaining from three of the resolutions: 2013-038, 2013-039, as well as 2013-048. I was not present.
All right. Thank you very much. Commissioner Ferguson?
Yes, on the matter of case 2013-153, the applicant's representative is Dow. I have a contract with Dow on other design, on other projects. I've disclosed this in the past. I do not see a conflict.
All right. Thank you. Is there any objection to Commissioner Ferguson continuing to participate? All right. Thank you very much. Commissioner Spring?
Yes, in the matter of case 2013-158, the Unified Planning Work Program for AMATS, I want to disclose that I worked for AMATS for 15 years and was a consultant for them. Many projects since then. I retired. I would like to request, however, that it be directed not to comment on any programmatic aspects of the Unified Work Plan, but I do have two comments I'd like to make that I think that aren't directly applicable to areas that I've been involved with and are more general in nature. Does that make sense?
I'm not so
well, there's
clear.
A general comment regarding what's delivered to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Unified Work Plan. In terms of the budget, we receive descriptions of the activities, but no budget, and I'd like to make a comment on that.
I don't think you can bifurcate your comments.
Okay.
So I think you either have to participate or not participate. And
I think
certainly,
it would be best for me not to participate then, just to avoid any conflicts in that case.
Do you stand any financial relationship? I mean,
Not currently, but I could in the future, yes.
Commissioner Ferguson, what is you're in the queue.
I was going to make a motion that he participate. And I do that on the fact that he is not currently stand to benefit. He's not part of the current process. And it is not uncommon that we often, end up in the situation you are now. I also specifically on that subject want his input.
His expertise.
Because I believe he has expertise to bring to this table, and I think we should use that expertise on it. And when he makes his comments, if we feel we don't want to follow his comments, we can not follow his comments. But he has expertise that I would like to be able to utilize tonight on that subject.
And Commissioner Robinson, have you seconded that comment?
Yes, I have, and I would simply ask that I didn't quite understand the nature of Commissioner Springs' desire not to participate, and perhaps I missed it. I understand your involvement, but specifically, you know, I, for example, am involved in different planning processes, and I personally don't feel that eliminates my ability to participate here. So I guess on that level, if you can explain it more, I think I'd respect where you're coming from, but otherwise, I'll side with the body and make you participate.
Well, yes, in commenting on different programs, there's a potential that I could make a recommendation for enhancing a particular program or adding a particular program that I might be able to benefit in the future as a consultant. There's several things in this work program that I have been involved in the past, including the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the collection and development of socioeconomic data related to the modeling, sections 480 of the Unified Work Plan. There's a lot of things I could say that would be a benefit to me that could be construed as being a benefit to me as a consultant.
That's awful spacious of the argument. I mean, I sit up here as a planning and zoning commissioner, and I'm a project manager. We could approve something in a body that down the road may or may not come to me. Stacy is a contractor. She approves projects that may or may not come to her. I think to be excused, it's got to be certain, more specific than it might benefit me down the road.
Okay.
Unless you're going to specifically put in a program that you are, which I
I would
don't
like
think
to
is going
fund
to
the
happen.
John Spring Retirement Program through the AMATS work. No,
Right, exactly. All right. I believe, Commissioner Spring, you have been directed to participate. All right. Ms. Dean.
No.
All right. Commissioner Chair.
Delta 1B Resolution 2013-039, I have been recused from that process today, so on the consent agenda, I will not be participating in that vote.
All right. And then for myself on D1A, Resolution 213-038, I have been recused from participating on that, and in Resolution 213-050 and in Resolution 2013-053. I was not present for that meeting, so I will not be participating. Thank you.
So I
All right.
think we have enough people for everything that's on the consent agenda, finally. All right, so thank you very much, Commissioner Yoshimura. So we're on to the consent agenda. I have a motion from Commissioner Ferguson.
On the consent agenda, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, but I would like to pull item 1A and bring that item back up on January 6th. But I would like a show of hands by the commissioners on, if everybody's here on January 6th, would everybody give me, John, are you here on January 6th? Yeah. Connie, you're out anyway?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
well,
right,
sufficient.
because we have,
And we should have the two new ones by then, I understand. The two new commissioners, but they won't be able to, that's right, they won't be able to participate.
They won't be able to
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah, but we should have enough.
So-
One short.
I'd like to approve the consent agenda, but I'd like to pull item 1A and move it to January 6th, our next meeting.
So you want to pull 1A? Anything else to pull tonight? Anything else to pull? Anything else? Pull? Anything? Tyler, you're thinking back there. All right, do I have a second on the main motion? I have a second, Commissioner Robinson. So is there any objection to passage of the consent agenda resolutions minus D1A? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? All right. So consent agenda is passed, and so now D1A, Commissioner Ferguson, you want to...
The reason I wanted to pull it is that's been around for 2 months. We just got it on Thursday, and I did not have enough time to go through that, and I had made that information well aware prior to the date, and so we don't have enough time to review it, and that's the reason why I want to pull it.
So I have a motion to postpone D1A till January 6th. Do I have a second? I have a second, Commissioner Dean. I think, Commissioner Ferguson, you already spoke to your rationale. Commissioner Dean, any comments on a second? Any other comments on the postponement? Do I see any objections to the postponement? See any objections? I'm seeing no objections, so D1A is postponed till January 6th. So that completes the consent agenda. So now we're on to D4A, 2013-160, the estate of Elaine Atwood. Do I have a motion? Commissioner Robinson.
Yes, I'd like to move that we reorder the agenda and deal with matter H1, appearance request, at this time prior to dealing with item 4A.
I have a motion to reorder the agenda for the appearance request first. I have a second from Commissioner Ferguson. Any other discussion? Commissioner Robinson?
No, simply that we had that request placed in writing, and I think it's appropriate.
Any other comments? Just going to make a quick comment that I support it. I'm not going to object to it this time, but I caution I do not want this to be a precedent that we will do this frequently. We'll make this a holiday gift. How about that? So that passes. So I believe it's Ms. Coynes. Is that correct, ma'am? Diane Holmes. I'm sorry. Diane Holmes. I'm sorry.
And I'm Diane Holmes. A few years ago, your predecessors, with their gray hair and first-hand knowledge of Town Square Park, acknowledged the tremendous volunteer effort that finally gave us that park. They did it by specifically adding a clause in the downtown comp plan that said, and I summarize, proposed improvements or changes to the design of the park beyond the repair and replacement of existing elements will undergo a separate site-specific master plan process that includes the public's involvement and approval by Parks and Rec Commission and P&Z. Your responsibility to the park is being undermined because some in this administration don't believe the legality of the downtown plan. You may recall the news articles that said that APD's survey recommended changes to the park, such as lighting, which is a no-brainer, and removing the perimeter hills and trees to combat illegal activities. While the APD has likely backed off on some of their full recommendations, you should know that their report said, remove the waterfall and the concrete retaining walls to discourage people from sitting on them. Now, I'd have to ask, what are they going to replace it with? Grass? That's fine with me. I enjoyed that better anyway. The downtown plan also calls for residential units on the whale wall on the 6th Avenue Outfitter side. People who pay to live in these areas eventually will expect some sort of noise-reducing mechanisms at the park. The berms provide that, at least on the lower levels. Be aware, too, that this park holds sun rights, and 85 height limits were placed on buildings south of the park and on adjacent blocks. There will be pressure to keep you from weighing in on these changes to the park and maybe to void restrictions altogether. While some of you may not be sold on the value of comprehensive planning, when you go outside, you see towns struggling to maintain their core downtown with antique and art shops, while commerce has moved and sprawled elsewhere. Realizing that sprawl is costly to maintain, our comp plan wisely recommends building from core areas outward. While this body has not always upheld that goal, you can visualize downtown if government and business move away. From the park strip to downtown Square Park, the green stuff makes for a great downtown. A flat concrete pad isn't what the framers of Town Square envisioned. APD should not be doing land use planning design. Please ensure that you have a role in the downtown plan and uphold the intent of the park, because few of the original volunteers are here to do so anymore. Thanks.
Any questions of our speaker? Any question for Speaker? Commissioner Robinson?
Yes, through the chair, appreciate the comments. Is your understanding of the process moving forward is what exactly?
Well, there's going to be some changes proposed, and you need to assert your right to see those changes before anyone else decides that they're going to get done without your review.
Thank you.
Just wanted to warn you.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions. Appreciate your time and the heads up.
Thank you for changing the agenda, and thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Oh, it is on the consent agenda. Yeah. Just making sure that the body understood that case 2013-160, the estate of Elaine Atwood, was part of the consent agenda. Does anyone want to further comment or elaborate on case 2013-160, part of the consent agenda? It was in the packet. I had no comments on it, no questions. Everybody's okay. I'm not seeing any comments from the commission. So we are on to D5 as well. 5. So we are all the way down to same thing with the AMATs. There was no comments on the AMATs, no questions on the AMATs. Also part of the consent agenda. Was there any comments on AMATs already?
Yeah, I am confused on AMATs. What is our action tonight on AMATs? I did not understand AMATs was on the consent agenda, so, but I understand how, but I think we approved D1A, or D1, B, C, D, and E, I think is what we did.
B, C, D, E, and F.
Okay. E
Right,
F.
and then 4 and 5 were supposed to be included under there, so you want to talk about 4 or 5?
To make things clear, I will make a motion that D1, D4A be approved along with the consent agenda to make sure it's perfectly clear.
Well, we've already approved the other numbers. If we could just focus on that one.
Okay, well,
Yeah, so it's 4A and 5.
well, 5 I would like to have some
Okay,
discussion.
5, we'll pull 5, fair enough. But
Okay.
4A is acceptable, 4A is acceptable, so 5 is pulled. So sorry for that oversight. So,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull 4A. I'd
like to comment on 4A as well?
Consent agenda.
Okay, we can do 4A and 5. So let's go to 4A. Do we have a staff presentation on 4A 2013, the
Mr. Chair?
estate of Elaine Atwood?
Mr. Chair, staff just left.
Staff just left. Let's run and get her. She already gone? Available on a cell phone?
Already gone. She's catching a plane.
Oh, catching a plane. So, John, what were your questions, John?
My question is one of the conditions of approval regarding the landscaping. And I don't have a problem with the concept. The recommendation was to have staff review a landscape plan to make sure that there's some landscaping that takes place in conjunction with the development of each lot, so that the landscaping can't be done at the very end. And this is a general question, maybe I'm sure Carol could probably answer it. My question is, should the Planning and Zoning Commission be giving authority to staff to approve a landscape plan when I believe it's typically done as part of the conditional use approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission? Are we authorizing staff to do something that we should be doing? That we're required to approve? Can we actually authorize staff to do that?
Any comments from staff?
I don't have the case in front of me, this isn't in my section, but in general, you can direct staff to follow up on a condition of approval. If this is one that you want more specifics on to come back to you, that's the other way you could deal with this case. But I've seen where this commission has outlined certain conditions for follow-up by staff as approval, as part of their approval process.
Yeah, I'll accept that, I guess. The only question I have is usually we list the specific plans in order, in the conditions of approval. In this case, we have a list, we have a site plan that's identified. In the previous condition, we had a landscape plan that was identified. Now, in this new recommendation, the landscape plan has been removed. So there is no specified landscape plan that's approved. And instead, it's given to the planning department to make any changes and negotiate with the developer for a landscape plan. So I guess my preference would be to leave the existing landscape plan identified in the conditions of approval and then direct staff to make changes which will enable some follow-up to determine that some of the landscape plans done in conjunction with each development as each development is completed. My concern is there's no identifiable approved landscape plan in this condition.
I guess I can see your concern. I would just, I read it differently, that the plan, they have the landscape plan from previously approved, and this is just provided that clarifies the landscaping associated with each unit. So I was a little less.
And I'd be okay with
My
that if
discomfort
there
was
was
less.
an identified landscape plan, but they removed the landscape plan from the conditions, and now there is no identifiable landscape plan. And I'm assuming there'll be a new one submitted and it'll be approved by staff, but it won't be part of our conditions.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Bryan, or Mr. Bryan, are you still in the queue, or you already done?
Yes. That is not an unusual condition. If there was a landscape plan, I don't know the specifics of this case, but the commission in the past has approved a condition requiring submission of a landscape plan. The original may not have met, may not have been satisfactory, or may not have met the desire of the intent of what the Atwood estate was intended to look like. I'm not familiar with this Atwood estate case at all, but the commission has relied on staff expertise. The author of this report is a landscape architect and is familiar with the case and has worked with landscape architects and is one herself to develop a landscape plan design that would meet the intention, the overall intention of what the Atwood Estate development was intended to present to the residents that would be living there.
Okay. Commissioner Robinson?
I might ask if we can ask the petitioner's representative to come forward and address some of these questions.
Here he is. Come on, Dustin. Since we don't have the staff, you want to help us out with this one?
That's fine. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Tony Hoffman. I work for the Boutte Company, and we're representing the petitioner Elaine Atwood estate. I have been involved with this case since 2005 in the initial application, and the intent of that condition is, the issue is that the original set of plans that we did, specifically the landscape plan, didn't get followed through on exactly the way it was supposed to. And the way the original approval there were certain conditions that the landscaping would be installed as buildings got built. Well, because the market kind of fell out after 2005 and this development got hit really hard, it just didn't quite happen the way the landscape plan phasing indicated. So what Ms. Ferguson and we negotiated was we're going to have to do a brand new landscape plan that updates what was installed and that will meet the conditions of the original application.
And, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
And
Commissioner.
why is that not submitted with this change in extension for a conditional use?
My original proposal was to provide a landscape plan after the case was heard. So, and then she changed that, so.
Well, if I understand it correctly, you are in violation of your conditional use because you didn't install the landscaping as agreed.
Right. Well, you can, yeah.
And I do understand the change in market conditions since
we actually-
2005. But, Mr. Hoffman, these homes are $1.5 million
Yes.
or more. So it would seem to me reasonable to think that they could have complied with a landscape plan.
We actually proposed that we do comply with all conditions of the landscape plan when build-out was complete. And she came back and decided that they wanted a landscape plan now before build-out was complete. So 4 of the however many buildings are in, or 6 of them are in, and we're not going to complete it all. So we were going to update the landscape plan and continue the phasing similar to what we had in the original application by Land Design North, keeping with the same concept, we thought. So we can come back to the board with another landscape plan and they can approve it, or we can work it through the planning department.
I am familiar with this development, although not as familiar as with other developments, where I have noticed that there is a considerable amount of landscaping that has to be put in by the developer. So am I understanding here that it's not the developer's the responsibility, it's the people who buy a lot to have their house built? I'm trying to figure out who's responsible for violating the conditional use.
It is the builders that are responsible, and it's in the conditions here. So as they get built, and landscaping has been installed, quite a bit of it, along the houses that are built. So the idea with the new landscape plan is to update it with showing what's been installed, what will need to be installed as each developer comes in and builds a unit. As you say, I mean, multi-million-dollar units, and the landscaping that has been installed is very nice landscaping, but the idea is that as the builders build, they will be responsible for everything in front of their house, around their house, so that the full build-out will look like the landscape plan that was originally envisioned with scale down from 26 to 23 units.
Commissioner Robinson?
Thank you. I'm a little confused. I need to distinguish in my head the difference between a landscape plan and the installation of that landscaping. Those are two different things. If you come forward for an approval or an amendment to a PUD, you should have a landscape plan. Whether you need to install that landscape plan all at once or as homes are, completed, I think is a totally reasonable, condition to put on there. So I guess I misunderstood. I'd like to know what the landscape plan is that's sort of guiding this conditional use. If it doesn't exist right now, then I would postpone. I would actually ask that the case be postponed until we could see one and then talk about the installation separately. But I think it's very otherwise. I mean, what you have here from a plan unit development is some basic criteria. You've got the lots shown, you've got the common space shown, but simply put, it doesn't take much to have an approved landscape plan associated with that, right? So is there one right now that's a landscape plan, or it's just kind of the old one that's been kind of in
There
flux?
is a landscape plan that was approved. It was one by LDN North, Land Design North in 2005. And it has shrubs, trees, counts, all of that. The idea was we were going to modify that for the existing build and then the final build, and then this application. The problem is the original site plan did not get the conditions of that were not followed. Permits were issued, slight changes to the building design, and lots were made, and it wasn't approved by the building department. And that was because it's a private development. These are not public roads. These are all private. So it kind of fell through the cracks of the building permitting process and the planning division. So what we came up with Ms. Ferguson was to update that Land Design North plan, have her approve it, and this is not something we haven't done before, because as Ms. O'Brien noted, that this is something we've done. But You know, we're
Would you object to coming back to the Planning Commission and with that revised landscape plan as part of the cleanup of the the conditional use?
if that's the staff's wish or the council's wish, of course.
Thanks.
I don't see any further questions. Thank you very much. So what is the wish of the commission?
Commission,
Yeah, I move to approve the amendment to the plan unit development with the conditions recommended by staff, with the addition of including the original citation for the landscape plan, which is my understanding is going to be implemented still, and with the also additional clarification that the staff will modify that plan in order to incorporate a new phasing standard criteria, new phasing plan for the landscaping in order to ensure that the landscaping is completed as the development proceeds.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to put that in that motion. So we have a motion to approve with the 16 conditions as written, and you want to modify 16 to say the staff to approve the phasing? I'm not clear what you want to modify.
Modify the approval in order to add the list of plans identified as approved in this PUD to include the original landscape plan, which the previous commission has approved already, and which is my understanding is going to be implemented and not going to be modified to any large extent, except for the exception of a new phasing plan in order to make sure that the landscaping is done as the development progresses.
So words to the effect for, let's say for item 16, you want the existing landscape plan is in effect and modifications to reflect the reduction in housing and the phasing to be shown.
Well, it's my understanding, Mr. Chair, that a new site plan has been submitted, which does show the changes in the lots.
The lots.
Duplexes, and for instance, and the combination of lots, which the original site plan did not include. But what isn't included in this conditions of approval is the identification of a landscape plan, which has previously been approved and which, is my understanding, is not going to be substantially modified except in order to create a more reasonable phasing plan for the implementation of that landscaping.
So again, is it some words to the effect that condition 16, that the existing landscape plan will be modified to reflect the reduction in units and the phasing or the build out?
Okay. 16 will be changed to
There we go.
say that the existing landscape plan will be modified by staff in order to reflect the existing landscape installation and furthermore to include phasing plan for the implementation plan.
Okay, I think I got it. Commissioner Ferguson, you second?
I seconded the motion, but I will not be supporting the motion. I think it would be easier for everybody if we were to table this motion, or table this case until the applicant can come back with a landscaping plan showing the current build-out. I believe that is what Commissioner Spring wanted. I believe it's easier to just stop it now, bring it back in, and we can take a look at it. So I second it, but I will not be supporting it.
So you're making a motion to postpone at this
If
time?
I can,
Yeah.
You can do that. We
Mr.
have a
Chair, I'll
motion and a
withdraw my
second.
motion then.
Withdraw it. All right, Ms. O'Brien, did you have?
Mr. Chair, I was just going to mention that in the motion that was proposed, I know it's withdrawn. I understand it's withdrawn, but that staff would not be making those modifications. That would be the responsibility of the petitioner. And if I understood what you were trying to do, you wanted to submit an amendment to the approved landscaping plan that shows modifications to the plantings, and then to incorporate the wording that's here that clarifies the landscaping associated with each unit and the retention of native vegetation for review and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission. That seems like what you were trying to get at, but the staff doesn't provide the landscaping services to the applicant. But you wanted to have the original landscape plan, you wanted it modified. Staff was recommending that it be modified to show what's going on, what's going to be planted for each unit, and that there was a phasing plan, a modified phasing plan, and also to show the details that were incorporated into the recommended condition 16. That's all I wanted to add.
So we have the main motion has been withdrawn. I now have a motion to postpone by Commissioner Ferguson, seconded by Commissioner Yoshimura. And the postponement is to see the landscape plan. It's in the original plan. Commissioner Yoshimura?
Well, I have seconded the motion. I think what we're asking for is what's already there in relationship to the original plan and what the future plan should be. So I'm just clarifying that, Commissioner Ferguson. All right, thank you very much.
All right, anyone else? Any other comments? Any other comments? All right, so do we have any objection to this? Any objection down there? Any objection on this end? Okay, that one will pass. So we'll postpone that one until such time petitioner can come forward with the landscaping plan. So now on to the case 2013-158, AMAT Citizen Advisory Commission. Do we have a staff report on that one, or that staff leave?
Mr.
Hey, there he is.
Chair, I'll just give a really quick intro on this. The reason this is here before you tonight is that, as you know, AMATS is the federally recognized planning organization here in the city that helps decide how to spend the federal highway dollars that come in here. And we are required by federal law to have a Citizens Advisory Commission. And long before I got here in 2003, someone decided that it made sense to have this body be the Citizens Advisory Committee, basically due to the fact that your knowledge of land use and land use planning is probably as good as it gets here in the city. And you meet regularly, so it's easy to constitute a quorum, and all of those reasons are why we bring this before you today. This is the 2-year program of projects that the Metropolitan Planning staff is going to work on for transportation issues. These are not capital projects. They're not building roads in this particular creature that's before you. This is just the planning staff and planning efforts. And so that's why it's before you today. And I'm happy to answer questions. It's a quick and easy version.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Spring.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff, question I have is regarding our role in reviewing the UPWP, and you have submitted descriptions of the programs broken out by numbers and elements and so forth, but we don't have a budget included in this. And my understanding is that there's a budget that links each of these particular tasks to a monetary amount. And I guess my first question is to ask you why that budget wasn't submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Through the chair, Commissioner Spring, the rules that govern how AMATS operates are our policies and procedures. And we also utilize our public involvement plan, and that specifically states that we take this, the program to our Citizens Advisory Commission, and we take the budget to the Assembly, but we don't take the program itself because to the Assembly because they're just obligating those funds, and we don't take the budget to Planning and Zoning. I'm assuming it's because we're relying on your planning expertise and land use expertise more so than the fiduciary side. I guess it's one of those, it's always been this way, and I never thought to question it before, but that's just the method that we've always used, is we've brought the program itself before the commission and not the budget for the work program.
Jim, is your question budget related? Mine, I have a budget. I'm on the same. Okay. So,
Commissioner Springs.
good.
There could be a program item that was worth $1. It's on. There could be a program item that's worth $1 that because it's only worth $1 we would accept. There could be a program item that's worth $1 million that when you look at the budget and what we receive from it, you, I think we need both halves of that. I think we could approve one half without approving the other half. But I mean, if you came up to me and said this item costs us $1, we'd say, okay, that seems a reasonable amount of money to spend for that item. But if you came up and said this item's $1 million, we may say, do we really need that program item? And so by only providing us half the information, if I was a little, to me, it precludes the due diligence that we should do on an item of this nature. Does that make sense to you?
Through the chair, Commissioner Ferguson, it makes sense to a degree. I will tell you this. In the 10 years I've been taking this particular program to this body, this is the first time someone has asked for any budget information, which is fine. Just giving you that piece of information. This is before you today for review and recommendation. It is not before you today in terms, for AMATS anyway, for approval. The only group that offers approval on this is our AMATS Policy Committee. Our technical committee only offers recommendations. They do not approve it. Our other committees don't approve it. It's just, they just review and give suggestions on what we might change, and then the policy committee makes the final approval. So we're happy to get information from you, and I'm happy to share the budget with you. I don't have any problem with that. No one has ever asked for it before.
Next year when this comes back, would you please bring the budget with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, then I have a non-budget related question.
Can I follow up on the budget? Let me interrupt and follow up. Stay on the budget. I happen to have a TAC Draft Table 2 AMATS Calendar Year 2014 Annual Element Budget from the website. Is that the budget?
Mr. Chair, if that is off of our homepage from the agenda, then that would be the budget. It's on there.
Then that causes, I'm kind of confused concern here, because we've got, you mentioned we haven't asked for about the money before, but the cover letter talks about the 1.2 million, and then it's got the budget of 1.3, but your actual budget's 4.3. So we're talking about a budget 1.3, which makes me, when I read this, I thought, wow, all that stuff for 1.3 million is a lot of money, but that's a lot of stuff. Then I look over here and see the budget's 4.3. So I'm wondering, why do you not want to talk to us about the other three? And so I got really confused on that. So I think it's pretty important, as Mr. Ferguson has already stated, that we kind of need to see the whole story here. This makes it look like you're being dishonest to me.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll just to clarify a couple of things. The budget that is included with the AMATS work program is the 1.2 million. If you're looking at what you're looking at, you see an additional 1.8 million in federal funds that are included in our capital program. We are required by federal law to show these funds, but they are not part of our federal work program. They're not part of the funds that we direct to say, this is what staff is going to do. Those include $600,000, which is a consultant contract for our Metropolitan Transportation Plan update, $250,000 for our freight mobility study.
Can you show me which column is capital?
At
All these
top
are,
of the column, it says STP funds to MOA AMATs. I apologize, I am colorblind, I could not tell you what color that is.
okay.
It is-
STP funds to MOA AMATs, okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Got it.
seventh column, I believe.
All right, that's 1.2.
Okay, so that's 1.820 million in that column. Then you have some federal highways, what's called CMAQ, or Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Funds. Those go to the Public Transit Department. That's 820,000. You have some other FTA funds that go there. That's the next column. There's an EPA grant, or several EPA grants. And so you have, those are a lot of other federal funds that go into this. And then you have some cash match from the Transit Department. The feds require a local match. So all of those together are what add up to that 4.8. The only dollar figure that AMATS utilizes to do our planning work is that initial column of 1.2 million. The rest of those columns include some funds to the state of Alaska and those other ones I just mentioned.
Well, now you said it's 1.2. Is it 1.2 or 1.328?
1.2 is for the AMAT staff that are housed in the municipality. The additional amount includes some money for consultant services, that 220,000, and another 128,000 which goes to the state of Alaska for when they are working on AMATs related issues.
Well, now you're at 1.5. You said 1.2 plus 2 plus 1. Or plus 0.2 plus 0.1, so you're up to 1.5.
Okay, so you have 1.2. That's
Got
the
it.
total dollar figure. That includes 980,000 of just staff time. That 1.2 also includes 220,000 of consultant services. So it's 1.2 plus the plus the 128,000, which equals that 1.328.
Right, that's what the memo says.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
we got there. Not sure how we got from 1.2 to 5, 4.3 to 1.5, but I think we're finally there. Okay, Mr. Ferguson, you had another question.
Can I follow, just one
financial?
more thing, real short on the budget itself?
Sure, it's the end of budget.
I just want to clarify, this requirement, I believe, comes out of the Citizen Involvement Program that the AMATS has adopted, the requirement that we only receive the program and not the budget. So it seems to me, would it make more, if it makes sense, if the commission believes we should get the budget, that we request that future updates of the Citizen Involvement Plan and rewrite that statement to say that the Citizen Advisory Committee should get both the budget and the program descriptions.
I would say that's probably a pretty good suggestion to offer that.
I think this spreadsheet with the footnotes that explain all the acronyms would, I could have probably got there.
I can't give you all the secrets.
I've got a website. Commissioner Ferguson, you have the question?
Okay, I have one other question. In the back, there are several financial tables and Appendix A's, or appendixes, and most of those I understand why they're not included. But Appendix E, Table of Major Discrete Projects, I think would be beneficial going forward to at least know what you're looking at in the way of projects.
Through the chair, Commissioner Ferguson, I certainly could include that in the future. All of those projects are inside here. It was just a breakdown of from the previous work program that had some items that were listed in the FHWA certification for us, that they said these are things that you missed on the last go-around, you absolutely need to catch this time around. So the technical committee and the policy committee of AMAT said you need to make sure those are done. So we created that. I don't have one this year because we don't have those big issues this year.
John, are you back in the queue, or?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
If there's no other questions, just one other question I have regarding Task 220, Local Transportation Planning Coordination. And this is one of the reasons why I think the budget's useful, not necessarily to question you about whether the numbers add up, but rather the amounts that of the program elements. How extensive is the program element? And this one, according to the budget, has $70,000 in the program element for local transportation planning coordination. And my question is this a new addition amount? Because I'm assuming this includes comments on zoning cases that the commission receives. It includes comments on planning projects like the East Side Plan, the UMed District, the Ship Creek Plan, etc. And we haven't received any comments from transportation planning since I've been on the commission. And I understand that there's lots of staff constraints, but is this 70,000 really a realistic number, considering that it doesn't look like we're getting a lot of comments?
Through the chair, Commissioner Spring, as you know, we had a position that was cut last year, and when that position was cut, we had to focus on the federal requirements, and local transportation planning in this category is comments on road projects, site plans, a lot of the things that you see. It would not be comments on bigger plans that we have as specific tasks in our work program. So if you have the East Anchorage District Plan, that's where we would charge that work to. But in this case, it was all those sorts of plans and plats and all that sort of stuff that transportation planning would do. Again, because that position was cut, we were not able to do any of that type of commenting unless we were very specifically asked by a project manager to say, we really need your information on this, and we would take the time to do that. But otherwise, we were required to do the federally mandated program. So now, in next year, we have been able to add this position back in. So we will have an associate planner added to our work program, added to our staff sometime hopefully in first quarter. And we will have the opportunity again, hopefully, to offer comments again on all the sort of things that we have in years past. And therefore, we think that that dollar figure in there is about an appropriate amount for the amount of staff time that we'll be charging to that.
I'm happy to hear that there's some new money in for a new position, because I think the commission really does need to have good comments from transportation planning, particularly with respect to some of the cases we've had recently where there's transportation plans that are being, should be utilized in some of the projects, and we don't hear about whether or not they conform to the transportation plans. That maybe your office could provide that kind of information to us.
Yeah, through the chair again, Commissioner Spring, I will say that we have had comments throughout the year on any trail or non-motorized kind of related activities, because Lori Skanke over in Public Works has been able to do that work for us. So we've continued to pay her for those, just not the other ones that my staff would normally comment on.
Okay, then. Commissioner Robinson?
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to provide a positive comment on the work plan, including the Spenard Corridor Strategic Plan. I think that's a great addition. I think when the West Anchorage District Plan was adopted, it recognized the importance of that corridor, but also recognized the limitations of what could happen within the funding for that study. And I think by drilling down into the corridor, I like some of the language where it talks about not just looking at traffic volumes and auto access, pedestrian connectivity, but also looking to maximize parking solutions, support property values and commercial growth, and integrate land use with transportation options. I think that's the type of planning we should be doing. I think that this in the work program shows an implementation of a step from one of our relatively recently adopted plans, and I look forward to seeing that carried forward.
I really appreciate the document. Well organized, easy to read, well written, great job. But the problem with making a easy to read document is I read it. So I got a couple questions real quick. No big deal, just real fast, just curious. 133, your performance plan. All your performance plans are really clear on what's going to get done. And then 133, it's we must work together. You said just couldn't figure that one out, or?
Well, Mr. Chair, some of the tasks that we have in here are, there are specific due dates, second quarter of 2014 or things of that nature. In this case, the task is basically that we continue to cooperate and work closely with the native village of Eklutna when we're doing our transportation plans and when they are doing their plans. This is a federally required. It's federally required that we work with any native tribes in our jurisdiction. Every other planning organization around the country is required to do the same thing. This is the only federally recognized tribe in our jurisdiction. So we don't have a specific task. We did sign a memorandum of agreement with them a while ago. And so it's just saying, don't let it drop.
Implement the memorandum agreement. That's great. The other one, well written again, but on 290, and I think it's well funded. 290. Just curious. Create new institutional framework. Just how afraid of that phrase should I be?
All I can tell you is these are federally required, and these. You were talking about the acronyms earlier. This is probably borrowed right out of their playbook. It's required that we create this congestion management process that shows the different kinds of things that we're going to do to make sure that our congestion stays, as relatively low as it is. Every planning organization around the country like this is required to have this CMP. And
so do you see that as being 290K forever, or is that just the first year we'll get it organized and then we'll be able to scale back a little bit once we got it running?
What this is, Mr. Chair, is we haven't updated our congestion management program in a while, and so this is a robust update with the consultant contract, et cetera. That's why there's a chunk of change in it. They're usually.
So you think there's a little bit of a spike?
Oh, it's usually
okay.
Just a little care and feeding, maybe $10,000 or $5,000.
Again, I think great job. Any other further questions for staff? If no further questions for the staff, what's the wish of the body? We are supposed to review and recommend. I have Mr. Spring.
Yes, I'd like, in case 2013-158, Unified Planning Work Program, I'd like to recommend approval of the work program, and with the additional comment that the Planning Zoning Commission would like to see in the future budget associated with the description of the planning task in the UPWP. And there's, let's see, I think that'd be it for my.
So, recommend approval? Okay, do I have a second? Commissioner Ferguson, second. Any discussion? I'm not clear if we need, I don't know if we need a amendment but again, I think you've got the message loud and clear. We want to see the numbers next year. Just print out the table with some acronym and I think we'll be fine. Do we need a formal motion of that? Mr. Ferguson, are you okay with that? Or just buy us all iPads so we can call it up while we're sitting here.
Okay.
All right. So is there any objection to the motion? That one passes. All right. So now where are we at? All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for Eklutna, 2013-153. 5 minutes. 10 minutes? 10-minute break. I think we're all back. All right, so where we're at. We're ready to go to case 2013-153, Eklutna, Inc., amending a conditional use for natural resource extraction. Staff report, please.
Okay. This is a request for a minor amendment to a conditional use permit for a natural resource extraction operation. It was originally approved May 4th, 2009. The petition area was 76 acres, of which 43 acres were being excavated. The site is generally located north of the existing gravel extraction operation at Eklutna 1, west of the village of Eklutna, and east of the Alaska Railroad right-of-way. The request is to relocate the crusher plants and the material stockpiles to the north, further away from the Eklutna River and out of the flood-prone area. over the last 2 years after periods of heavy rain, the site has experienced significant flooding in the working area of the gravel pit. The property is Zone T transition and R7 intermediate rural residential. The area being excavated is not closer than 200 feet to any residential property line or water well. Sheet 3 of 3 on page 163, as I turn to it, it shows the gravel pit plan showing the mining operation occurring in 5 stages to occur through the years 2013 through 2015. As shown on the plan, the excavation area is divided into 5 sections. As the operations move further north, the location of the material stockpiles and the crusher plants follow the progress of the excavation. Now, this relocation will result in movement closer to the mining operations horizontally, closer to the residents of the native village of Eklutna. However, the mining operations will be between 10 and 39 feet lower in elevation than the village, and there is a 10-foot tall by 35-foot wide berm that has been constructed between the equipment and the 200-foot wide vegetative buffer adjoining Eklutna village. The lower elevation, together with the earthen berm and the vegetative buffer, is expected to provide noise attenuation, thereby providing mitigation for the horizontal proximity. There was only one comment from a reviewing agency, and that came from the Department of Health and Human Services, and it states that noise levels were measured this summer by the applicant, and it appears to support that last statement that was made, that the distance in the berm does support the statement that the lower elevation and the 35-foot wide earthen berm and the 200-foot vegetative buffer are mitigating factors for noise. Measurements taken indicate that noise levels do not exceed the allowable levels under Title 21. The applicant indicates that they have received no complaints about noise. Neither has DHHS's records reflect any noise complaints in current years at this location. There have been no returned comments objecting to the minor amendment to the conditional use for natural resource extraction to allow the crusher plants and the material stockpiles moving further north as the excavation proceeds further north. The department does recommend approval of the request subject to conditions 1 through 5 on pages 4 to 5 of the packet. The applicant has, it was laid on the table tonight, they have responded to a complaint report that was received by the current planning section on December 3rd, which was forwarded to the applicant's representative, and the applicant can respond to that. One of the conditions does address one of the conditions does address, there was a requirement both for the original approval in 2007 to submit reports on a log of complaints and also an update on the amount of material that has been excavated. It was for the original master plan, site plan that was subject to conditional use standards, and that is located south of this current site. And apparently there has been some confusion. It states quite clearly in that condition of approval number 16 on the 2007 resolution that they are to be submitted to the, at the time it was a planning department. But the reports seem to be sent to various employees in the municipality, and working through all the files, I could not find any of the reports. and have discussed that with the applicant's representatives, and they are working on trying to acquire those reports to update our files. And the current petition site, the 43-acre excavation site, the report I received came from the land use enforcement officer. He forwarded it to me. It was a log of complaints. He forwarded it to me on December 3rd. So we're not quite sure who these reports are going to, but they're not coming to the current planning section. And so the applicant's representative has provided information on that log of complaints. And the thing that was confusing to staff was that there were several complaints about speeding, and the complaint log said the trucker was put on notice, but staff didn't know what that meant. So condition 5 is recommending to amend the log of complaints to specify the remedial actions taken to correct actions by employees that have generated complaints by the public, so that we know what putting on notice meant and how it will help to solve the problem that the public is complaining about. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Ferguson?
Is, in this case, is now Mass X, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. Eklutna has the original permit and had the original permit, and it is Eklutna's obligation to inform the current applicant as to what the conditions of that approval are. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Mr. Ferguson, that would be correct. However, I do know that the current contractor has contacted the current planning section to find out exactly what they're expected to do. So in terms of those reporting requirements.
Okay. I preferred the language putting on notice because I had very clear understanding of what that was. And laid on the table tonight is a pit access denial, and I was going to recommend to Mass X, or to Eklutna, that they use a multi-step process where the first time a driver is caught speeding, he gets a written notice. And I'm adding written there because right now that's not clear that it's written notice. And I think that we need the written notice language, and we need the applicant and the operator to both have the obligation to make sure that there is a written record kept on that. And I like the fact after the second notice, they're barred from the pit. I think that will be a very strong deterrent, and that's what I'm after here. So when the applicant comes up and speaks, I'd like the applicant to discuss their procedure to make sure we have that on it. What is our system to make sure that we receive the reports we should receive? Does the planning department have a tickler system or keep track of what reports they should receive?
Through the chair, I'm not sure. This is my first introduction to this case that's been going on since 2007. I did not notice any tickler system in the. There's many, many files on this case. There's several files on this case.
Not just this case, but it's not infrequent that in this kind of a case that we ask for the applicant to make a report on an annual basis. And if there's got to be, I would hope there'd be some system within the planning department to notice that on this date we should receive this report.
Through the chair, Mr. Ferguson, I don't believe that kind of system has been set up yet.
And
then we can take your recommendation into to the back to the department.
I recognize that recommendation is beyond the scope of what we're talking about. No further questions.
Commissioner Dean.
Through the chair, my question is related to the report on page 8 and repeated on page 9, the log of complaints received by contractor. You received the document just as it is. You did not receive any other information than what's on this page, correct?
Through the chair, Ms. Dean, that is what was forwarded to me by the code enforcement officer in Eagle River. Yes, that's what I received.
From the code enforcement officer in Eagle River, which is a city employee, I take it.
Yes, he received it.
Okay, so he received it then from Eklutna or from XMass, I'm assuming?
Through the chair, Ms. Dean, I really don't know.
Okay.
He forwarded it to me, though. He knew I was working on this case.
Okay. And then on the original case, I looked through and I must have missed it, but was there any kind of a format required for the contractor or the owner of the property to follow on complaints? Like a sign, like who to call or how to make a complaint or anything like that? And then once they receive the complaint, how it will be logged? Is anything done that way in the conditions required in the approval?
Through the chair, Ms. Dean, the original approval required that information be posted on site as to who to contact during the day, after hours, in order to log a complaint. As far as the format for the complaint log, that was not specified in the original approval. It was assumed that the complaint log would be devised by the actual contractor and be submitted.
Okay, so if I had a complaint about noise, I would just go down to the sign that's in front of the gate there, I'm assuming, and it would have a phone number, and I would call that number, and whoever answered that number, I would say, X is doing, speeding or, lots of noise or whatever. Is that the information that was on the sign?
Through the chair, Ms. Dean, yes, it would be a contact number for both the Eklutna and for the contractor.
Thank you.
Contact information for both entities.
Commissioner Yoshimura.
No. Oh,
Commissioner Dean, you were done.
yes.
Okay, sorry. Connie, you didn't know?
Oh, well, I did have one question, I guess. Under the department recommendations, number 3 and number 4, has all of that information been submitted? Or are we still awaiting all that information? I see some reports here that were laid on the table, I think. So can you tell me if these are all the reports? Yeah. Can you tell me that?
Through the chair, Ms. Yoshimura, no, we're trying to get reports dating back to 2007. The original excavation through 2013. I believe that the applicant's representative could respond to that question as to the efforts that they're going through to acquire those reports, because that's why they're conditions of approval.
On one hand, I wish the planning department had a system, a tickler system, that could identify when a report is due. On the other hand, this is an important economic activity for the petitioner, and it seems to me that there should be a more concerted effort to apply and to apply all the conditions of their conditional use in a timely manner. I'm a little surprised, really, quite frankly, that any petitioner would come forward without having made a serious effort for compliance with a conditional use. It's disappointing. Thank you.
Commissioner Strike.
I was going to echo the last speaker, and I look at the log report received December 3rd. This seems to be a summary. This is not a log report. in the generality of business and so forth. You name the trucker. I mean, there's no names. It's not a detailed report showing. It only shows a summary. And yet we have cases here where pit access denial, we've got the name, the date, the action, and so forth. So I have to imagine there's an actual log that's being kept in order to compile, let alone this summary. And the other point was, and I think I'm echoing Ms. Yoshimura, and that was the updated materials for 2013. That report's due December 1st. I'm not seeing the report. Yet here we are asking for an amendment, and oh, by the way, please approve, and we'll get that later. So a little disappointed that knowing that the petitioner is here today, that they haven't complied with the reporting.
Commissioner Spring.
Yes, to the chair. It looks like the complaint log that you submitted with the packet on page 9 is for 2013, and there's something like 7 different complaints that are logged on that. Now, this particular conditional use was approved in 2007, I think, right? And so my question is, where are the complaint logs from 2007 to 2012? I'm assuming there must have been some complaints if there's 7 and 13.
The whole point of the condition is to get those reports. I don't know where they are. We don't have them. I believe that the complaint log starts in June because that's the applicant's representative can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Mass X probably is the new contractor, and that might be the date on which they started or they took over the contract mid-year. The complaint log is started in June. I'm assuming that Mass X assumed the contract mid-year. So the prior contractor was responsible for the excavation and the reports from 2007. The site you're looking at now, or you're reviewing now, did not start in 2007. It was approved conditional use in 2009, in May of 2009. The first excavation was a master plan approval, and gravel natural resource extraction was a permitted use under the master plan, and it was subject to the conditional use standards. So there are basically 2 gravel operations, the one that started in 2007 and then the one that started in 2009. This one is a conditional use. This is the one that is before the commission tonight. And this started in May of 2009. I know it's confusing. I had a heck of a time going through all those files, trying to figure out what was going on here.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Packet, Resolution 2007-11, number 15, talks about the operation of the site shall include the following, which includes the telephone number, the contact, and has 4 or 5 points there. On the resolution of 2009, it continues, all conditions of the resolution 2007 remain in effect. So the obligation to post a sign, the obligation was all correct. The recommendations today, I guess you're saying that they're covered in under 1. But I think it would be a lot better if resolution 15 on page 49 was repeated in full with the department recommendations. Rather than just say it's included, I'd like to bring some emphasis to that one to make sure that it gets done. Would you have a problem with that?
Through the chair, Mr. Ferguson, if that's the will of the commission, however, the original resolution on page 49 is already cited in Resolution 2009-23, but for added emphasis, another condition could be added that to identify the first resolution, 2007-11, as well as 2009-023, if that's the will of the commission.
I'm trying to bring some emphasis to that, and so I believe it's been lost because I had to go back through 3 different sets of resolutions to find that language, and we struggled to get the point across to the owner and the operator both of what we expect. And I mean, I've got an 1.5 inch of paper up here, and I doubt if the scale house manager wants to read an 1.5 inch of paper, so I'm going to try to make it easy to tell him what we expect him to do. Thank you.
Commissioner Dean?
Through the chair, could you please clarify for me who is ultimately responsible? Is it the applicant, which it says is Eklutna on the application, or is it the contractor to Eklutna for tracking all this information? We don't have any control over who the contractor is. That can change at any given time. So I'm under the impression that it's Eklutna's responsibility to have this paperwork for us and not the subcontractor, since we have no control over who that will be. Could you clarify that?
Through the chair, Ms. Dean, Eklutna Inc. is the holder of the conditional use permit.
All right, I don't see any further questions. So, do presentation from petitioners, rep? Mr. Strait, were you for staff or, I'm sorry, didn't late. You guys a question for staff?
Yeah. My question to staff is, the purpose of this petition is that we've seen flooding that's occurred at the site, and the idea now is to move the rock crushing plant to an adjacent area. That's my understanding in the details here. But I also note that part of the plan previously was a requirement of a drainage plan. So it begs the question, maybe the petitioner can answer this, did the drainage plan fail? So I'll oppose that.
Am I allowed to answer that? No, there was an earthen berm that was actually placed across the Eklutna River, and that was actually in conjunction with the construction of the railroad, and that's actually what has failed. For some reason, it's leaking sideways into the pit. So it's actually the river is coming in.
All right, we're ready for the petitioner. Petitioner's rep. Go ahead. State your name.
My name is Michelle Ritter. I'm with Dow HKM. I'm the applicant's representative. With me this evening is Chad Dugood from MassX. Also is Jim Arneson and Aaron Elam with Eklutna, and also Tim Potter. So they can speak in more detail as needed. Just to kind of go to the letters, I'd like to hit on that first. The package that was laid before you, this is actually the annual letters that were submitted as per the condition since 2007 to 2012. We are trying to locate 2009. As you'll notice, Alaska Aggregate, or AIC, was the operator up until 2012. So we've actually contacted them, and they've tried to go through their files and give us what they have. Seeing kind of the uncontinuity that went with these letters, Eklutna and MassX have come to the agreement that Eklutna will take charge of submitting these letters. The log, or the summary that you guys have that you're referencing on page 8 and 9, that was a result of Chad calling Tim Hamrick and actually asking him what format he should be submitting the complaints in. And I think there was a little bit of miscommunication. They were told, yeah, an Excel sheet is fine. So that will be coming back with a formalized letter. There's an understanding now that that's not really sufficient. So it's noted. We understand why you were concerned about seeing that summary, but it's going to be addressed. And it was going to be addressed in a more timely fashion, so it wasn't that they weren't making the effort to submit by that December 1st. So apologies on that. As far as the format, it's not specified. So this is actually kind of the standard letter. I know Alaska Sand and Gravel also kind of submits this, so it is standard, but I don't think there'd be an objection to making a more formalized requirement. The site is posted with both Eklutna and MassX contact information, and anytime the pit operator changes, they do contact the local community councils to provide them that change and that change of contact information. So, and they, Eklutna regularly attends all of the community councils in the Eagle River, Chugiak, Birchwood area to kind of keep them abreast of everything that's going on with all of their holdings and projects in the area. MassX has kind of, as they were starting up, they did realize that there was, the noise wasn't so much an issue, but obviously there was some truck speeding issues. So they have instituted a one-strike policy. As you'll note, and kind of alluded to with this written pit access denial, they are put on notice, and then their second strike, they are denied access for the rest of the year. Sometimes it's hard to ID the truckers, and so that's another reason why you're seeing a lot of almost, I don't want to say unresolved, but so they are trying to get better. They can only kind of police inside the pit. They cannot police coming into the pit. So they're trying to figure out ways of getting that under control before they even get into the gate area. And Chad Dugood's here if you have any questions more specific on their complaint policy. So with that, we've read staff's report, and we agree with the conditions of approval. And then I'd like to save the rest of my time for rebuttal.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Conditions 15 and 16 on, I lost my page. On page 49 in the application, I believe you're currently bound by them, but I would put them in there to bring emphasis to them. And I also would like to make it clear that any of these notices should be in writing. It wasn't clear before, and lining all the truckers up one time and shaking your thumb at them, in my opinion, does not constitute a warning. Dragging one trucker out and making sure he knows it was him that you're after, that would constitute a warning to my way of thinking. No further questions.
And we would not object to repeating those conditions as and what the admitted is stated through the chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spring.
Yes, through the chair. There's the original approval, conditional use approval. I'm reading the minutes from that, which talks about speeding and issues about access. And this might be something Mr. Potter can address because I think he was there, or your representative. It says that AIC, which I'm assuming was the original applicant, has offered to upgrade the frontage road and will enforce speed controls by contract and monitor that. They've also agreed with the village to supply a van so that if there's any necessity for school children or members of the village to get around and they do not want to walk on the frontage road, they can be given transportation. So I wonder if you can tell me what the status of that was, whether or not any of those, first of all, was the speed controls in your contract with the excavator, and the other issues, please. Thank you.
Mr. Spring, my name is Tim Potter for the record. In response to your question, let's go back to the upgrades of the frontage road. The radius and area of paving was expanded when AIC started their operation so that their trucks would fully wheel on asphalt. And it made the corner, we did turning templates and then went out and made sure that we could have an area wide enough that the trucks could stay totally within their lanes as they came around the sharp corner to get onto the frontage road from the access road. So that was the improvement to the road. Yes, there has been speed equipment, and I can let MassX discuss that specifically. And the bus stop was actually moved closer up to the primary access road as you first come across the overpass, so that the location of the bus stop that was partway down the frontage road has been moved, and that was to avoid the situation of having to have a shuttle bus. So those have been addressed.
Hi, I'm Chad Duguid with Mass Excavation. We actually did install, when we first got the first couple complaints from the village for speeding, we did install a radar detector on a Windmaster to be able to indicate, to let the truckers know, or even the public know that they're speeding through that area. We do actually have, and sometimes during the day, I actually have 2 scale people out there. So I kind of wanted to see, even though we can't be there at all times, it's kind of a deterrent that they can see that speed trap. So I would actually have my scale person go out there and monitor it as well, and that's just to see what was going on. And you could tell as soon as if they were going 27, they would see it flash and actually drop down. But what we ended up doing was, as soon as we started getting the complaints about speeding, we ended up talking to the truckers. We ended up doing inside the pit, our speed limit's actually at 12 miles an hour. Over the years being in pits, if you do a different kind of speed, not 15, 20, 25, you do an odd number, it gets people aware of what the speed zone is. So we ended up putting 3 signs in the pit. When we indicate them in the pit, we have an idea that that's the culprits that's outside doing it as well. And with the gentleman that we actually blackballed from the pit for 2013, we caught him in the pit. And that has nothing to do with this, but speeding in the pit, we knew the person told us the type of truck, and then the next person actually said the color, and actually got caught of 3 or 4 of the digits in the back of the truck. So we can actually indicate it because of our program actually has the truck numbers and all this other stuff. Everybody that calls, we try to tell everybody, when they call to say that the truck, we've seen a truck speeding. Well, what kind of truck was it? Was it a residential? Was it, there's indicators, there's driver, there's a license plate. In the front of the bumpers, they have identification numbers that are 4 by 8. The bumper's about this big, and you can actually see the identification numbers. So we're actually kind of helping them give us a better idea, because it's almost a quarter of a mile between where we can find them and see them before we hear anything. So we definitely want to be good neighbors and want to be out there to monitor. I have kids myself, and I don't want to see any truckers getting any close. So, and we're, this year compared to last year, if you look at the report, there was probably 4 or 5 times more gravel extraction compared to last year and the actually last couple years. So there's actually more traffic through there. So, everybody was kind of used to the lack of extraction the last couple of years that the previous pit actually produced those couple of years. So we're trying to just make sure that everything is compliant. We did talk to code enforcement to get that summary, that login, and I believe it was Tim. Yeah, he was fine with that because we asked him if he needed anything else, and he said that was significant enough for him. But if there's anything else that we need to do, we're more than willing to do that.
Commissioner Shimura.
You heard earlier tonight regarding the Atwood Estates conditional use that got postponed because they hadn't done the appropriate work for landscaping. In the past, when we've had conditional uses like for Brother Francis Shelter and Carlick Manor, we've required annual reports. It seems that there are annual reports that have also been required that have not been fulfilled with this particular conditional use. So my question to you is, Ms. Ritter, in items number 3 and 4 on page 4, submit all of the years that reports are missing, and then submit copies of all the years that reports are missing. When do you think you could provide those reports?
As I stated, the packet before you actually does include
Some
the
of
years.
those reports.
Most of those years. We are actively trying to locate 2009. We've actually contacted AIC and are asking them to look into their files. So I would like to say 30 days. We're investigating it, and Margaret indicated that there are some boxes at the planning department, and I guess I might have to pencil out an afternoon to go over there and help her go through those, if need be, to make sure we can find the 2009 report.
Do you think the reports have been submitted and are just not available?
I do believe they have been submitted. If kind of going through the chain of these, it looks like they were originally submitted to Brian Dean, who was the code enforcement officer for the first several years, and then it looks like about 2011, it changed to Angela Chambers, so somebody must have communicated that it was the planning department that they should have gone to, and then it looks like, there were several people who were CC'd, so I do believe that there was just some confusion and that they probably got submitted to the wrong person, but I do believe it exists.
So does your client not receive copies of these reports?
Now that MassX is operating the pit, they will be receiving copies. AIC did not, we're not really good about always submitting the copies.
Just to clarify, AIC was the initial operator on behalf of the conditional use for Eklutna. Their contract was ended, and Eklutna sought out a different operator because of issues. So they have self-policed themselves, gotten rid of that contractor, ended that contract. MassX is now in place. We actually had an educational processing meeting once MassX was the announced contractor. They came to our office. We went through all of the old records of the conditional uses, tried to explain to them exactly what was required, that all the notification numbers, names had to be at the gate and posted. We also had items that were identified as things that were not supposed to be done on a reader board that's at the scale house. Talked about the speed limits, keeping the area clean. I think the reason that AIC probably sent most of the reports to Tim Hamrick at Code Enforcement is that Tim Hamrick drives by the site twice a day and was the one that typically had an interface with AIC during their operation. AIC then had about a 1.5 to 2 year period where there really wasn't a lot of activity and they didn't do anything at the pit operation itself. So we also have log of a complaint. That was a question of what's going on. I don't hear anything. What's going on? There were calls that came to me. Tim Hamrick sometimes would call me if he saw that there was a tracking issue out on the frontage road. So it did get very well looked at and taken care of, but I believe that Eklutna has self-policed by ending a contract, getting a different contractor, and that everyone's trying to do the best we can. Now, there are other operations in the city, as you are aware, that do have annual reports, and those have gone on pretty much without a hitch. Sometimes they're after the exact date that they're supposed to be in, but in a good faith effort, they do try and do that. One of the other things that the commission could do is require that we come back under a non-public hearing, just on a consent agenda, and submit that to the commission through the staff, so that you get to see it as well, and that would be fine. As far as the notices to the drivers themselves on a first strike basis, we have no objection or problem having those be in a written format.
So you would have no objection to submittal through a non-public hearing of the missing documents?
Yeah, we'd like to make that submittal. I don't necessarily want to call it something that it's not, because we don't want to have an application fee.
No. I do understand that. You want to do that in 30 days?
So, and for clarity, you're saying not only the 2013, but also the missing 2009?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct, to bring you in complete compliance. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Strike.
Yes. I have an opportunity to drive by this site probably once a week this past summer, and I want to commend you. I mean, it's a great-looking site from the road, very little intrusion. To me, it's been a well-run looking site. My question, though, comes back around to one issue that I've noted, and that is covered loads. And my question to you, are the loads all covered when they leave the pit?
No, they're not.
Is that in any conflict with any current when they pass the weigh scales and so forth? I mean, there's a difference between covered and contained. And the reason I say this is that invariably you don't get behind one of those trucks when they're pulling out onto the highway at speed, when they're pulling up to 60, 65 miles an hour as they're going up the Eklutna Hill, rocks are coming off. I will tell you that now. And then by the time they probably go up to Peters Creek area, it's pretty well settled down because they've already been traveling now about 8-10 miles at speed. But you do have rocks falling off the trucks.
Normally in the past, and I haven't seen it on this, for instance, and you have, normally on that material, it's usually fines for asphalt. We don't have asphalt running through on this pit right now. And normally that is. The fines are so lightweight, they stack it all the way up to the top of the side dumps or the belly dumps. And a lot of times they water them down. We actually, in the past, in other pits that I've been involved in, we would actually water down the material on top to weigh it down so it wouldn't blow around. But most of that is on fines. It's not usually on borrow or type 2A or anything like that. It's mostly on the fines because it's just in a sense, it's the sand.
Well, it is fines, it is sands, it is dust, it is accumulating on the road, and the city and the state then comes in and has to take care of it. It's a natural here in Alaska. But I'll tell you, I work within probably 35 different states, and Alaska's probably the worst as far as trucks traveling without covered loads. I think it's an issue. I just put it out there and leave it at that.
Commissioner Spring.
Yes. Am I correct in reading this packet that there's a time extension will be needed at the end of 2014? Is that the end of the conditional use permit, or when is the renewal up?
It was the 5-year extension was just approved in 2000. I think this one was 2012, so the 5-year extension is actually up in 2017. There's an anticipated end date, project dependent, of about 2015 is when they anticipate and would like to be wrapping up extraction.
Okay. One other question. Would you object to adding a condition that would require submittal of a speeding control plan to be reviewed and approved by the traffic department? In general line of what you were discussing earlier.
So just formalizing kind of what Mr. Duguid has explained is happening, but document form and approval by the traffic engineer?
Yes.
Yeah, just a regular TCP, yeah. There shouldn't be a problem with that at all.
Anything else, John? You look like you're thinking, John. Okay, Commissioner Ferguson.
Yeah, back to Commissioner Yoshimura's questions. My one concern is what happens if nobody can find the missing 2009. I mean, my concern is more with staff not letting us know in 2009 or 2010 that it was missing. I feel that is where the failure was. And I would be concerned with going 30 days further and then nobody can find it. I mean, if they've looked at it and they've obviously tried to answer the question with giving us what they want, I don't know if there's anything to be gained except making a point. I'd rather make the point on that the staff should have been on top of this. The staff should have been watching for these and raising the red flag at that time. I give you that the applicant also should have done it and should have kept track of it, but
Well, Jim, that's my point, I guess. You know, this is a major economic activity for the petitioner, and it seems to me that they do need to have control over their contractor, and that they should make sure that they also have a copy of the annual reports. I think that's appropriate. I don't think the burden belongs on staff, really, quite frankly. I think it's up to the petitioner and the holder of the conditional use to provide that information, and normally, in the course of business, you would keep copies of all of that in case staff didn't have it. So I don't believe that this burden falls totally on the responsibility of staff. I'd just like to know that they're following the conditions of the conditional use, and if they come back to us, I think they're going to make a concerted effort if they have to come back to us in 30 days, and maybe they'll have to say, you know, we couldn't find it. I don't know.
Commissioner Strike.
Yes. On the November 2010 report, and this may answer part of the question here, on the November 2010, it does compile the information year to date, so it does include the 2009 period. So their compilation, and subsequent it's compiled, and so that is the first year. So 2009 existed; it was someplace, and so the data's there, the data's available. Would that report for 2009 be any different than the report information that we're already seeing on the 2010 letter? So does that become a moot point?
Yeah, maybe.
And we do have, communication with AIC and the gentleman who we've been contacting may actually be able to clarify that, and we can ask him.
And so I think you see the concern here of it's the process, not the individual detail. We've got the detail here that covers the missing year, except for 2013. What we're missing is, and I hope what you're taking away from this, is the process and the questions and the concern that we have. So without belaboring that point, is it fair to say that we've got the information for these years, other than the incident reports that might have occurred during those periods, but we're driving home a strong point. And I think we really want to hear it. The message is being heard.
Yep. Thank you.
I don't see any further questions. Any other further questions? Any closing comments? This is not a public hearing, so you have anything? All right, thank you very much. So the matters with the body. What is the wish of the body? I have Mr. Ferguson.
In the matter of case 213-153, I make a motion that we approve, specifically including the recommendations on the department recommendations on page 4 and 5, also including the recommendations on pages 49 and 50 that are numbered 15 and 16. Those two are added for emphasis to make sure that they are complied with. And that's my motion. I am, after the second, I'd like to speak to that.
And we have a second, Commissioner Dean. So, Commissioner Ferguson, care to speak to your motion?
Okay, I specifically not, though I may need to change this opinion, holding this for the missing 2009 report. I don't believe that is, I think the message has been firmly delivered, that we're expecting a Klutna as well as the applicant to make sure that these are included. I have not included the speeding traffic plan question because I believe with this added information, added request, that we've got that covered on it, so I have not included that. And I guess that's my summary.
Commissioner Dean seconded, and Commissioner Dean, you want to comment?
I like the amendment, or not the amendment, but the motion as Jim put it forth. I do have a potential suggestion for another amendment to this that Commissioner Strike brought up, and it is a big issue in Anchorage. It's a huge issue in Alaska. For whatever reason, I believe the law says that they're required to cover their loads. I do for my company. They're automatic, they're retractable, they're very simple. What if we were to consider adding an amendment requiring that all trucks and trailers leave their lot and that it's posted that they all be covered before they leave the pit? Now, that doesn't stop a driver from driving around the corner and lifting the cover. But should we require a sign and potentially a fine or some other notification that all trucks and trailers be covered, loads?
My comment back is I don't know that that is the law of the land. If I see a lot of trucks not covered, if we were to go the covered way, I would want to clarify that we're talking trucks hauling aggregate products only, so that we don't get trucks hauling equipment being covered, or trucks hauling diesel being covered, or I'm trying to clarify that the intent is trucks hauling aggregate of some nature.
You could say loose loads.
Yeah, but I don't know if I like loose loads, because then the drivers would say my load's not loose. I remind you, most of these are Teamsters, and so they are rather good at arguing.
Could we say just to resolve with the city with on the wording?
I think we'd have to give the city direction. I mean,
I'm really concerned that we'd be imposing something on this pit that wouldn't be imposed on other pits, and we might not be fair to the community to do that. I think, yeah, if we want to make a recommendation, it should be to the assembly to pursue this. I don't know that you want to put this burden on just one of many pit owners.
I might be willing to support you at the assembly, but I don't believe it'd be fair to pick this one pit, this one time to, and I don't disagree with the comment.
Well, I disagree with Commissioner Strike, because I live in Peters Creek, and sometimes, come look at my windshield on the way out, Greg.
So you do agree with me?
I did, but you said Peters Creek, they were done by Peters Creek, and I was saying, come look at my windshield.
Well, I would ask the petitioner, is that a burden? I mean, on the same note that I saw these trucks going up, every one of these trucks that I've seen has the tarp, has the cover. They're just not placed over the load. Is this an inconvenience, or are we missing the law here?
What is the law? I don't know what
it isn't a law to cover your loads.
It is not.
It is not a law to cover your loads.
I didn't think it was.
It would be what would most likely happen is if you put this on this pit, they would go elsewhere because of that 5 or 10 minutes to take some of them do have automatic tarps that they have a switch inside their cab and they hit it and it flips over and flips back. Most of them don't. It's a cost that these guys cannot occur in their truck. So what they have is they have a tarp that they have on a 4x4, and the guys get up on top of the load and they drag it this way and go across a side dump or a belly dump and come across or an EDP and drag it out. And then they bungee cord it to the back. There's a liability. I mean, I know down in the lower 48 there's some in California and Arizona, a lot of theirs are tarped. It's a law, because they are all tarped. But in the state, it is not a law to tarp your loads.
Are we saying that it's contained or is it covered? Because neither one's happening. It's not contained if the product is coming off the top. Mm-hmm. And I will dispute you just a little bit because of many of the trucks aren't single tarps. They are a canopy system in many cases, either sideways or length of the truck, but it's every truck I've seen has got them. But they're
the
not
side
used.
dumps do have them.
Side dumps.
Yeah, the side dump, not all side dumps do. There's quite a bit of them that do, because a lot of them actually carry debris, construction debris, not including trees and stumps, that you don't want a tree or stump to flop out. But a lot of them are not, they're manual. They're not automatic. And a lot of trucks, they're not only side dumps going in there. You got EDPs with the truck and pup. You have doubles going across our scales because we actually have doubles set up, and bellies.
So this would be a burden that you feel if it were imposed on this particular project site?
Mr. Chairman, to respond to Mr. Strike, we do believe that it would be an undue burden, unfairly done, and that based on my experience, I think the market would drive a lot of the users to a different place, maybe even the borough, which exposes that you're concerned about for even a greater distance. And this is another one of those situations when it's already a pretty significant deal to go through the conditional use process, and you end up getting a betterment of the operation over what you'd typically get in a non-conditional use status. And now all of a sudden you'd be making them have another additional impact that the rest of the marketplace isn't enduring. So if it was across the board, not a problem.
All right. Commissioner Internet, what is the law?
Okay, here's what I found through the chair. It's Alaska 28.35.251. A person may not drive a motor vehicle loaded with sand, gravel, rock, or similar materials on a highway unless 1, the load is contained or confined to prevent the load from dropping, shifting, leaking, or escaping, except the sand or other substances that may be dropped, sprinkled, or sprayed for the purpose of cleaning or maintaining the highway or providing traction, and 2, the load is subjected to treatment by methods approved by the Commissioner by regulation designed to settle the load or remove loose material before the vehicle is driven on the highway. B, if a cover is used to contain or confine a load being driven on a highway, the cover shall be securely fastened to prevent the cover from becoming loose or detached or from being a hazard to other users of the highway. That was number 28.35.251. You can find that under the Rules of Administration, Administrative Rule 43.1, and it goes through the Alaska Rules of Courts. And it is the 2011 edition is what I was looking at. If I could ask the petitioner, am I correct in what I just read? Do you find any fault with what I just read?
No, if that's actually on there, I would assume that's correct.
Okay.
The other issue is they go across the scales coming into Anchorage. If that's a law, why isn't it the scale operators at the commercial division enforcing the law?
Mr. Chair, I did not hear from that unless I just wasn't totally, it didn't sound to me like you're required to cover. So
Not required to cover.
So the petitioner was correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But they are required to confine their load from coming off of the truck. And I think that's the issue, is that so many of us are behind trucks that do lose their loads from a variety of methods. They could still be covered, but often on the tail of the truck, there's debris. And the tailgate didn't get shut completely on an end dump. And so you've got debris there, and they go down the road, and it bounces off the back of the tailgate, and it's totally, coming off the edge of the bed.
And normally that becomes the driver's responsibility. In the past, if you've ever been out in a pick, they usually use hockey sticks to clean off the top of the debris after a load gets locked off. They go on the back after they dump a load on the site. They actually mop off debris off their tongues of like an EDP, or even the belly off the back of a Stinger. They go back there and wipe them off because they're responsible for the loads. It's just like if we have a rock come off of our vehicle, or we're carrying trash in the back of a pickup and it hits another vehicle, we're responsible. They're responsible as drivers, not us as an operator of a pit. That's up to them. If they want to get that ticket, or if they want to have that that driver come up to them and go after their insurance for cracked windshields. Some of the commissioners have here. I have many. A couple of years ago, I actually had one from my previous company, actually, one of my rocks hit my own personal truck. So, I mean, it does happen. It's part of construction. We got a very short season, but
And some of it comes off other, just regular passenger vehicles.
Yeah,
I've had
it can
stuff
come
fly
off
off.
the
So
tires. I mean,
you don't know. Okay, anyone else in the queue? Any other?
I would be willing to amend my motion to clarify that the applicant is required to comply with Administrative Rule 43.1, 28.35.251. Would that answer your question and keep my second?
Yes.
It's saying you have to comply with the law. Surprise! Woo! Pardon?
Yeah.
Yeah, have to apply with the law. Speed laws and everything. So I'm not sure there's value added there, but if that makes you happy, I'm sorry, editorial. Okay, do you want to make a I see no one else in the
I
queue?
added that to my motion.
Yeah, that was on your motion. I see no one else in the queue. Any other comments? Do we need the machines? We okay? I'm looking okay left. I'm looking okay right. So that one passes. Thank you very much. And you already gave findings, conditions as is. Are you comfortable with the findings? We good? And with the findings, conditions from page 49 and 50, 15 through 16. You got all that. Okay. And then his last, did you get all the numbers on his law? Okay. All right. So we have the next item on the agenda is case 2013-159, Matanuska Electric Association, Inc. I need a motion to postpone.
I make a motion to postpone.
I need a second. Any comment? That motion passes. Any reports?
No, I don't have a report, but this idea that we're supposed to be through or make our recommendations for the design criteria manual by February 11th, I think is a little ambitious. I'm not certain how we're going to accomplish that. I think the chairman should contact the assembly for a to give us another 60 days.
I think this initiated the fact that they wanted the DCM to come back to planning and zoning was Jennifer. So I will contact Jennifer tomorrow and see if I can't find out what their plan is, what their expectations are, because I don't see any way I could possibly review and approve that thing in that time frame.
I think it's interesting that
Work
the
sessions.
assembly is now saying that they want to put into ordinance the 2007 DCM, while at the same time staff is working on the new DCM.
Do you recall there was a timeline? That was moving along.
Connie,
Yeah.
what they're planning, I don't know this, okay? I'm guessing
Yeah,
this.
you better keep this off the record.
I'm guessing what they want us to do is to come up with the process so that they can apply it to the other version when they get it done.
Meantime, it would apply to the 2007 DCM.
Yeah, but that might change. But I'm just saying, they expect us to vet that process, and that's what they're trying to get.
What happens if nothing's done?
Then they act on their own, which isn't really.
No, very good. You're quick. Noted. I will contact Assemblywoman Johnston tomorrow and confirm that she's the leader of that effort and get clarification on what needs to be done. I'll let you guys know by email.
Okay.
And we may have some work ahead of us on that. Anything else? Any other reports? Any other comments? Commissioners' comments? I need someone to. Ms. Yoshimura seems to be one that wants to get out of there quickest. Oh, Stacy beat you. So, Connie, you second. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.